Okay, let's try and picture this. You're stepping back, way back, ancient India, Savatthi.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this monastery, maybe Pubarama, buzzing with people. It's an Uposatha day.
A special observance day, yeah.
And right there, you see this large group of women, maybe, what, 500 of them?
About that, yeah. The text mentions around 500.
And they're grouped by age, observing the practices.
Mm.
Then someone approaches them, someone well-known. And she asks a question that kind of kicks everything off.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving in today. We're looking at this really fascinating story from the ancient texts.
Right. What sources are we working with here?
So these are excerpts from Uposathakammavatthu. Bit of a mouthful, but it basically means the story of the Uposatha practice.
Okay.
And it's part of the Dhammapada commentary. We've got access to it in both the original Pali and also a Thai version.
Great. So our goal today, our mission, is really to unpack this story.
Yeah.
Right? Understand the different ways people were thinking and get to the heart of this powerful teaching, the simile the Buddha used.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to help you cut through the layers of time and history and grasp the core message pretty quickly.
So paint the scene again. Uposatha Day, Savatthi. These 500 women are at the monastery, Pubarama. Buddha's there.
Mm-hmm. And they're observing the practice. That means likely taking on extra precepts for the day, maybe fasting afternoon, not wearing ornaments, things like that.
And who's this figure who approaches them?
That's Visakha, a really key figure, a major lay supporter, very devout, well-respected in Savatthi.
Yes, Visakha, okay.
So she sees these women, and they've sort of naturally formed groups according to age. You've got the older women together, the middle-aged ones, younger, married women, and even young girls.
Makes sense.
And she goes up to each group one by one and asks them, basically, so why are you doing this? Why observe the Uposatha today?
And the answers she got, they weren't exactly what you might call purely spiritual aspirations, were they?
Not in the way we might think, no. They were very grounded, very worldly, actually.
Okay, like what did the older women say?
The elderly women, their hope was straightforward. They wanted to attain divine prosperity. Basically, a good rebirth in a heavenly realm.
Okay, so future-focused, but still kind of worldly game.
Exactly, a better future existence. Then she asks the middle-aged women.
And their reason?
This one's quite different, very immediate. They hoped observing the Uposatha would free them from having to live with a rival wife.
Wow. Okay, so dealing with, difficult family situations.
Yeah. A very real social issue at the time they were hoping to resolve through this practice.
And the younger women? Married? Maybe hoping for kids?
You got it. Their wish was to have a son with their first pregnancy. Again, a very common and culturally important desire.
Right.
And even the young girls, the unmarried ones.
They had a goal too.
They did. Their hope was to go to a husband's family while still young. Essentially, they wanted to get married soon, get married young.
So Visakha hears all this, a whole range of hopes, a good afterlife, escaping marital problems, having children, getting married, all tied to this one spiritual observance day.
But all the goals are within the cycle of life and death, vata. That's the key. They're about improving their lot within the system, you could say.
Right. So what does Visakha do? Does she comment or judge?
No, the text is clear. She just listens, takes it all in. Then she gathers all the women together and brings them to the Buddha.
Okay.
And she reports everything she heard, group by group, in order, just lays out their motivations for him.
So the Buddha now hears this range of, very human desires, heavenly rebirth, fixing family life, kids, marriage. How does he react to that? To these very worldly aims behind a spiritual practice?
Well, interestingly, he doesn't really engage with their specific wishes directly. He doesn't say, oh, that's good, or you should aim higher. Instead, he immediately shifts.
Shifts to what?
He pivots to a fundamental teaching about existence itself. And he uses this really striking, quite stark simile. He says that the beginning of these beings, birth, essentially. It's like a cowherd holding a stick.
A cowherd with a stick.
Yeah.
Okay. Driving something.
Driving life. He explains this progression. Birth sends life hurtling towards old age. Old age then pushes life towards sickness.
Right.
Sickness pushes life towards death. And then death. Death cuts life off. The source says it's like someone cutting wood with an axe.
Whoa. That's quite an image. Especially right after hearing about hopes for sons and marriage, it feels very inevitable.
It is, and that's the point. It highlights this unavoidable process. And then, connecting to that, the Buddha makes this really sharp observation about human desire itself.
Yep.
It speaks directly to why the women wanted what they wanted.
What's the observation?
He points out that even though everyone knows this process, birth, aging, sickness, death is unavoidable, people generally don't wish for nibbana. They don't wish for vivada, which means freedom from this whole cycle. Instead, what do they wish for? They only wish for things within the cycle of vata, better circumstances, better experiences inside the ongoing process.
So it's like the women were focused on, I don't know, getting a nicer spot in the field maybe, rather than thinking about leaving the field altogether or why they're even being driven around in the first place.
That's a perfect way to put it, exactly. And to really hammer this home, the Buddha then delivers a verse, a gatha, that locks the simile onto this reality.
Okay, let's hear the verse.
It goes, "Just as a cowherd with a stick drives cows to pasture, so too old age and death drive the life of living beings." In the Pali, that's Yatha dandena gopalogabo pajeti gokarang evanjara kamakucha ayudang pajenti paninanti.
Okay, that verse feels central. Just as a cowherd drives cows to pasture, so too old age and death drive the life. Let's unpack that simile as the source explains it, because driving to pasture sounds kind of positive, right? But the application seems different.
It does, and the commentary clarifies this. It looks at the word pajeti, which we translate as drives.
Right.
Now, normally, a good cowherd uses a stick carefully to keep the cows away from danger or forbidden places, like someone's crops, and to guide them towards good pasture, easy glass and water. It's about skillful guidance towards something beneficial.
Okay, that makes sense for a literal cowherd. But the verse says old age and death, pajeti life. They drive life. That doesn't sound like guiding towards easy grass and water.
Exactly. And the source explains that in this context, when applied to life ayudam pajenti, the meaning shifts. It still comes from that root idea of directing or controlling, but here it means they cut off life, they cause it to cease.
Okay, so the driving here is more like forcing it along a path that ends.
Precisely. Think of the stick less as a gentle guide and more as an instrument that relentlessly pushes forward, limits options, and ultimately directs towards an endpoint.
Got it. So how does the source explicitly map the parts of the simile then?
It lays it out clearly. The cowherd in the simile represents old age and death.
Okay, the force is doing the driving.
Right. The herd of cows, that represents life. Specifically, it mentions the jivitindriya.
Jivitindriya. What exactly is that again? Is it just being alive?
It's a bit more specific. It's often translated as the life faculty or vitality principle. It's the underlying force or energy that maintains the continuity of life for a being moment to moment. It's what keeps the process going. So it's not just the body, but the very lifeness, if you will.
Okay, the life principle itself. Yeah. So the cowherd, old age and death, drives the cows, the life faculty. Where's the pasture they're being driven to?
In this application of the simile, the pasture is death itself.
Right, not exactly green fields.
No, so the whole sequence is birth starts the life faculty moving. Old age pushes it relentlessly forward, sickness weakens it, maybe speeds it up, and death is the destination, the pasture it's inevitably driven towards.
In that final moment,
yeah,
death cutting off life, that's the axe hitting the wood image again.
Exactly. It underscores the finality, the cessation. So the whole simile, as the Buddha uses it here, is about this constant, unavoidable pressure exerted by aging and mortality, pushing life towards its end, regardless of what we're hoping for along the way.
So let's bring this back out. We've heard this ancient story, right? These women, Uposatha Day, very real, relatable hopes, and then this stark teaching from the Buddha using the cowherd. What's the takeaway for you listening to this now?
Well, I think it throws that contrast into really sharp relief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The difference between all the things we chase, success, comfort, relationships, maybe even a good afterlife like the elderly women wanted, all those temporary goals versus this fundamental, inescapable reality the Buddha's pointing to. All those goals, all those desires, they exist within this larger process that's always moving towards old age, sickness, death.
Yeah, it's kind of sobering, isn't it?
Yeah.
That this whole profound teaching came out of a simple observance day, prompted by these very understandable human wishes.
It really highlights how much energy we can put into, like you said, finding the best spot in the field, arranging things nicely within the cycle.
Yeah.
While maybe not often confronting the nature of the cycle itself or its ultimate direction.
And you mentioned the source says people hearing this teaching had breakthroughs?
Yes, it does. It notes that many in the assembly listening to the Buddha explain this attained significant spiritual insight. like stream entry, the first stage of enlightenment. So this wasn't just an intellectual idea for them. The rawness of the simile, the truth it pointed to, it clearly hit home on a very deep level. It shifted their perspective, fundamentally.
So wrapping this up then, the core message seems pretty clear. Life, our life faculty, that's like that herd of cows.
Yeah.
And old age and death, they're the cowherd with the stick, constantly, nudging, pushing, driving us
Towards the inevitable end, towards cessation.
Okay, so here's something to leave you with, maybe a mull over. Given that reality, that even the most diverse hopes and dreams we have for family, for success, for comfort, whatever they are, ultimately happen within this process that's being driven towards death. What does hearing this perspective from this ancient text make you think about the goals and aspirations you hold for your own life? Something to consider.